was working at a firm and I was promoted to management role and I started doing one-on-ones with the employees. And at that level, I could see all their salaries. And it became clear to me that our really, really good developers who we were paying a high salary were making a lot less money for us than our more junior developers because they were slower and we paid them way less and we were billing everybody out at the same rate. And I was like, I had already been trying to hire better top tier developers. And I was like, well, wait, maybe we should hire a bunch of junior people who aren't that good. And I was like, I could not accept that that didn't make sense. And so I thought about it for like 2 weeks before I even questioned the hourly piece. But then as soon as I thought, well, maybe if we didn't bill by the hour, and we gave fixed prices, then all of a sudden we'd want the best developers on planet Earth because then they'd be fast and would be, the margins would be higher and so forth. The quality would be great.
Hey everybody, today we are joined by Jonathan Stark. He's a former software developer on a mission to rid the world of the hourly billing model. He's the author of Hourly Billing is Nuts, host of the Ditching Hourly podcast, and writes a daily newsletter on pricing for independent professionals. Jonathan helps experts package price and sell outcomes instead of time, leading to higher margins, better client relationships, and ultimately saner businesses and agencies. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me. Great intro. Wow, that was perfect. Thanks.
So listeners of this podcast, I'm very much in alignment and in agreement with the hourly billing model is nuts. It's been something that should have died a very long time ago. But for those that maybe haven't made the switch right now, let's maybe start with what is possible, what can be done instead of the hourly model?
Yeah, that's exactly the question I had when I kind of had the epiphany about hourly billing being a problem. I was working at a firm and I was promoted to management role and I started doing one-on-ones with the employees. And at that level, I could see all their salaries. And it became clear to me that our really, really good developers who we were paying a high salary were making a lot less money for us than our more junior developers because they were slower and we paid them way less and we were billing everybody out at the same rate. And I was like, I had already been trying to hire better top tier developers. And I was like, well, wait, maybe we should hire a bunch of junior people who aren't that good. And I was like, I could not accept that that didn't make sense. And so I thought about it for like 2 weeks before I even questioned the hourly piece. But then as soon as I thought, well, maybe if we didn't bill by the hour, and we gave fixed prices, then all of a sudden we'd want the best developers on planet Earth because then they'd be fast and would be, the margins would be higher and so forth. The quality would be great. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow, it opened my eyes to a whole bunch of challenges we had inside of that firm that were all based on the fundamental assumption of a billable hour down at the root. But back to your question, I didn't know what else to do because everybody bills by the hour and it never occurred to me that there was another way to do it. We had done some fixed price stuff and we'd gotten what we felt like we got burned on it. We should have really done it by the hour. We would have made more money. And so I didn't know what to do. So I presented this to the owner and I told him what I just told you. And he said, I understand this intellectually, but like, what would we switch to? And I didn't have an answer for that. So I went solo and started my own firm to go and figure out what the alternative might be without risking the livelihoods of, 15 developers in the process. So it was almost serendipitous. I was walking through, but this is a long time ago, 2005, 2006. I was walking around in a physical bookstore and came across a book called Value-Based Fees by Alan Weiss, and the heavens parted. I was like, oh, this is an approach it's fixed pricing, but it's a completely different approach to calculating a price. And that became my Bible for like 3 years. And it was exactly what I needed at the perfect time.
At that moment. Yep. It's interesting how life likes to give us the things that we need right when we need them, right?
It was weird. Yeah.
I'm going to go off script for a moment because like you mentioned a couple things that I just fundamentally, and I think it's useful for anyone that is currently in the hourly billing model. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And I'm going to introduce a couple of pieces of my opinion on it. But I think that the hourly model incentivizes like all of the wrong things. And you alluded to a couple of them of like, one, the client doesn't know what the end price is going to be. So it leaves a lot of ambiguity to them, which clients do not like. So they're not unhappy about it. But they also like want to equate an hour to a value. So they're like trying to figure what that looks like. So like, well, how do I then equate value versus the hour if I don't have that? So like you have to then give them another solution. But then internally, you're also disincentivizing senior people that do great work, that do more impactful work, and actually with less time and maybe even a quarter or 1/10 of the time doing better work than the junior level people. But then junior level people are disincentivized to learn to do things faster because then the company makes more money if we do things slower. So then that makes it more expensive, and then we end up pricing ourselves out of the market. And I'm going to step off my soapbox, but it's like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. So yes, all of the things you said in my book, I just list a whole bunch. There's like, I could come up with a dozen things that are wrong. The main ones that I think people will care about, there's a selfish one and a sort of generous one. The selfish one is like, you're limiting your income. You're putting an artificial ceiling on how much money you can make because there's only so many hours in the year. And this is why people, a lot of times, people who don't really want to be a boss or lead a team, hire a team because they ran out of their inventory. They only have 2,000 hours a year they can sell. So I need more hours to sell. So what do? I hire people. So now I have more inventory of the thing that I sell. And they don't even want to grow a firm. They're only doing that because they think it's the only way for them to get a raise. The generous thing is, and I found this right away, is that it's much easier to satisfy clients. They are way happier with the relationship. They calm way down. The clients from hell thing goes away because they don't have to worry about what the price is going to be. They also stop worrying about deadlines as much because the reason most clients are so worried about deadlines is not because there's some actual deadline. It's because they see it as, they equate that with how much money they're going to have to spend. So if it takes twice as long, it's going to cost twice as much. So we have to set, October 10th, it has to be done by October 10th because the money's going to run out. It's not because they actually need it on October 10th. So the clients calm way down. It becomes much more easy to satisfy them. And all the other things that you mentioned, all the other things, it's more profitable. Everybody can relax. It's significantly better.
Disincentivization of like, I mean, just thinking about it from like a very selfish side of things is that it's ironic that the better I become, the less money I would make because the faster I would produce. And just to me, it's just antithetical.
It punishes expertise.
Yeah, which just makes zero sense. The other side of it too is that, I mean, if you were to think about it in the context of a lawyer, and I'm not meaning to shit on lawyers because they're needed when they're needed and you want them in your corner when you want them. But like, no one enjoys the idea that if you're going to call your lawyer, and a little bit of a funny tidbit is that I have a friend of mine named Nicole, and one of my employment lawyers is named Nicole, and they're both saved in my cell phone. And I would accidentally call my employment lawyer, and I did it about like probably half a dozen times, and eventually I got a bill for it, which rightfully so. I did it half a dozen times. But it's like when you spend a minute on the phone with them, they're billing you for it, And so like you end up not wanting to engage with the person that you need to engage with because they're going to charge you for every minute you're on the phone. So then you end up with a client that doesn't give you the context that you need, that ends up making it a bit more difficult, that ends up making it take more time. And then you also have to write off the hours because you're like, I can't charge that many hours for this. You're like, it's just, it pains me. Anyway, yes. let's talk about 3 ways that you talk about packaging expertise and being able to sell it. So you have value priced projects, you have productized services like off the shelf pricing, and then digital products, kind of more lower ticket. So let's talk about each one of them, the value of each one, and kind of how they fit within the agency space and what kind of services fall within each bucket.
Okay. Do you want to let's start with products because that's the easiest one, I think, to get your head around. So a big piece of changing your mindset or off of hours is to start thinking of your expertise and the benefits they can provide to the right kinds of customers, your ideal buyers, and packaging it in different ways. And so everybody understands what an ebook or a physical book is, or a course or something like that. So let's start there. You can take your expertise and package it up in a way where it is of some value to your clients and price it at a level where it will make sense for them to buy it. So, whatever, it's $20 for a book or it's $200 for this video course or something. So for maybe these are clients who are thinking about DIYing the thing that you do. Maybe it's a web redesign, a WordPress thing, or vibe coding something. And, it's going to be pretty bad if they DIY it, but it's like I DIY things around my house. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to hire someone to come in and paint the molding. So there are people out there that's perfectly fine for them. They're like, okay, I'm just going to try and DIY it. And they give you $20 or they give you $200 and they get this product and it sells itself. not that it sells itself, but it's no touch sales. So you wake up in the morning and somebody has bought this course and they get the videos. You don't have to deliver it. You don't have to sell it. Maybe you market it, but that's no big deal. And when people are done with it, they're like, wow, that was great. Let's just assume that you know what you're doing and you're good at creating, you have expertise and you created this thing and it's good quality. So they're delighted with it and they've gotten a positive ROI. And that is, so what's great about this is that it's no touch sales and delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And what's maybe not obvious about it, there's at least two things not obvious about it. A lot of people think, well, making a product or course or writing a book, that could take like a couple hundred hours. And I'm only going to make $20. I've written books that take 200 hours to write a book, basically. And it's like, I'm only going to get $20 for that. That 200 hours I could have billed out at $200 an hour and made $40,000. And it's like, that's no good. It's the hourly thinking creeping in, because when you do something like write a book, let's stick with book, and it's $20, you'd have to sell thousands of them to make back your hourly rate. But what you don't realize is that it's more like an annuity than doing client work. So if you're used to just doing client work all the time, that $200 investment, 200-hour investment can be paying you dividends for 5 or 10 years.
Yep.
And the amount of money that you would need to have in the bank to throw off a few $1,000s in interest a month is like 500, a million, 500,000, $1 million. So it only took you $200 hours. Sorry, I keep doing that. 200 hours to essentially put $1 million in the bank. That's giving you few $1,000s a month. So that's one thing that's not obvious. The other thing that's not obvious is it's marketing. So that person that thought they were going to DIY their website buys this thing from you. They think it's great. They trust you. They go to do it. They get sick of it. They don't want to do it. All of a sudden they're like, you know what? This is harder than I thought. I really would rather just hire this person to do it for me. So it becomes like your marketing costs are like negative. So somebody gave you $20 to trust you more, believe that you're an authority on this thing, and perhaps climb up your product ladder and buy the next thing up, which would be a productized service, or they jump straight to a project.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it for me, that there's exactly as you're describing, a couple grand a month in book sales, audible sales, etc., but millions of dollars on the back end of service revenue off of each book.
Yeah.
But I want to ask a question from just the clarity perspective, but digital products outside of a course or a book could also potentially be like a website, template that someone can download that is a WordPress template that they can utilize as well, right?
Anything that you don't have to touch for them to buy it and receive it.
Okay. And let's then talk about the distinction between productized services and value-priced projects.
Okay. So productized services are a fixed scope service that you sell at a published price. So it's halfway in between what most people probably do, which is project work by the hour, and like a product, like a book. So you sell it like a book, but then you deliver it like a service.
Got it.
And the trick is that you want to, picture it like a bottle of aspirin, Excedrin, let's say. So on the front, you've got the benefits of the Excedrin. It's like, hey, got a migraine? Excedrin, quick relief. So you have a marketing page that's basically that. So you say, okay, this is the problem you're experiencing. This is what your life would be like if you didn't have the problem anymore. This thing that you're reading this page about, this thing that we're selling, is a solution to that exact problem for someone like you. Here's how you take the next steps. And then maybe there's some fine print, like the ingredient, not fine print, but like farther down the page, you'd have ingredients, which would normally be on the back of the Excedrin, because it's not that important. It's important, but it's not as important as stopping the person who's walking down the aisle in CVS and saying, oh, I have a migraine, or I get migraines. So the ingredients might be on that page too, and say, well, if you buy this, then it entitles you to a kickoff call, and then every other week, hour-long phone calls, and then in between, unlimited Slack access, or whatever the thing is.
Yep.
So you describe the scope, and maybe it's 4 months, or it's month to month, and that's it. So this in between, this is sort of the Goldilocks. It's like not this, not that. It's right in the middle. It's no touch sales. So you can just like wake up and there's more money in the bank, but then you have to deliver something. And it's kind of like, it's going to feel like delivery is going to feel like probably what you normally do. It's just going to be certain pieces of what you normally do, and you're just going to do it. So it is still, I don't want to say customized, but it's personalized for the client inside of a boundary that keeps the scope very, very fixed.
Yep. Okay. And then what is the difference between that and the value-based projects then?
So the big difference is that a productized service, since you're in control of the scope, you know how much you want to charge for it. so you can publish the price, which makes the sales, marketing, sales process way, way easier. You don't have to talk to anyone, clients, I mean, in order to sell it. With a value price
Assuming that you have the
project,
authority.
yes, of course. So, and the price and all of the other, right. So there's some marketing things that we probably could talk about after, but
Sure.
assuming that you have leads or people are interested, following you, an audience or something, then they'll see this and be like, you know what, I'm ready to buy this, but they don't need to
Yeah.
get on the phone with me for 30 minutes for me to pitch them. Right. So the main difference in the project from those two other things in a project that you're going to value price is that you do have to have a sales interview, and it's probably going to be an hour for any good sized project that's worth going through this effort. So there's a sales effort at the beginning, and it's not that easy. I'm not going to lie. It's like it took me a while to practice these sales interviews to get good at value pricing a client, because it takes a long time. It took me about 18 months to really stop costing first. I was always scoping first in the sales interview instead of scoping last, which is what I do now. Very, very different mindset, and it takes some practice to get used to it. But what happens is the client says, hey, I heard great things from Alice. Could we jump on a phone call? You jump on the phone call. You say, could you tell me about the project? They brain dump for 15, 20 minutes. They exhaust all of the things that they can think of. They've probably done a bunch of self-diagnoses, self-prescriptions. This is what we think we want you to do. Here's a list of tasks. And you say, hey, this is all great. Thanks. I wrote all this down. Can we back up for a second and talk about what's going to happen after this launches? So let's say I'm done. Imagine 6 months, a year from now, I'm done. What happens next? How does this improve your business? What is the context that this is launching into? Why is this important right now? Couldn't you wait a year and do this later? Projects are risky. They're expensive. It's going to take a bunch of your time, my time. Why not put it off? Why do it like this? You've got this idea where you think you want to develop it in this particular way. Have you considered other things? Have you considered this? And maybe you make suggestions of other things to find out if they did consider them or ruled them out. And then you say, why would you hire someone expensive like me to do this? Why don't you do it yourself, or get your cousin Vinny, or outsource it to an emerging economy, or Upwork, or something else? Tell me why you really feel like you need to invest with a professional. And they'll tell you. And so if you get credible answers to all of those questions, you'll be able to, based on the kind of company and the person you're talking to, you'll be able to come up with a guesstimate for roughly how much the outcome they're looking for is worth. So then at that point, I recommend 3 prices that are fractions of that value, that you then scope what you're going to do into each of those price buckets. So if the thing is going to be worth $100,000 to them in the first year, then I'd set 3 prices. A rule of thumb, not a hard rule, but a rule of thumb, I would start with 10%, 22%, and 50%. So 10,000, 22,000, and 50,000. And then I would say to myself, what do I want to do for $10,000 that I would be fist pumpingly happy to deliver? Yeah, that is going to help them move the needle on this goal that they have. What could I do for $22,000 on top of the thing I would do for 10? Incremental, like I'd add something on top of the first option. What could I add that would be different and deeper and more useful to them, or move the needle more likely to move the needle? And the 50,000, same thing. So I'm sort of creating 3 productized services in collaboration with the client, and probably only for this client. So it's very customized. It takes some skill to do an interview like this. And it takes a little bit of time to write, you have to write the proposal and you send it. Maybe you got to wait a week or 2 for them to answer you. So it's a sales process. So you want the project to be like I wouldn't do one of these for less than probably $50,000. It'd be like, come on, like I'm not going to go through all this. Just buy the off-the-shelf productized service. If you've only got $10,000 or $20,000 or even $5,000, like buy that productized service. But if there's high value, if the client comes along, or it's too big of a client for the productized service, and you wouldn't be able to, the scope's too small for them, a predefined scope, then you'd say, okay, let's talk. You talk to them. You're like, wow, there's a ton of value here. I'm definitely going to write a proposal for these people because the prices I can set are really high. And there's tons of things I can do to help them move the needle inside of these buckets that are, again, 10%. It's a small fraction of the overall value.
Yep. So several thoughts, questions, comments. So the essential difference between the two in your eyes is one that's a published price point versus what could even theoretically be a productized package that is being presented but in a value-based way, or doing it but more in a sales-oriented context. It's not a published price. Is that
it'd be impossible
summary?
to do I think so, yeah. It'd be impossible to do a published price for a value-based proposal.
Yeah. So couple of thoughts. I mean, obviously, I think that, I mean, the $50,000, well, you and I might agree that $50,000 would be a smaller oriented value-based project. That might not be true for the person listening. So I want to just
Mhm.
give caveats that there are some distinctions depending on who it is that you serve and the amount of money, resources that they have available of what type of threshold that they're going to have to buy something off the shelf versus
Sure.
needing to have a conversation. But as a general rule, is there a price point that you tend to see diminishing returns from a productized published dollar figure selling something on a website or on a landing page that allows for someone to actually be able to convert at a reasonable volume?
So I want to make sure I understand the question. So is there diminishing returns in what way?
So let's say, as an example, that if I were to lay out a context, so let's say that I've got a landing page that is able to convert 1% of the total traffic that's going to it. But if I were
Hmm.
to send the traffic to a call booking page, I was able to book 11% of traffic and then being able to convert 25% of those people into an actual sale. And the diminishing return between the two distinctions, if I were to hire someone for $70,000 a year to go through the actual sales rigmarole, to sell them
Oh,
on a productized package service that's not quite as, I mean, there's a value component to you still the way that you want to sell it anyways, but
you mean revenue?
correct.
Okay. So I guess there's a lot of ways to answer that question. The most realistic one is that you don't have to pick one of these. You can do all three of these things: products, productized services, and value-based projects. And
Sure.
in fact, a lot of people I work with do this kind of one-two punch of a productized service that is kind of like what they used to do as the kickoff for a project anyway. So
Mm,
it's some kind of long phone call or multiple phone calls with a bunch of stakeholders, interviews, finding out what really should be done, sort of like a paid
discovery phase.
analysis. Yeah, it's basically a paid discovery phase with recommendations or roadmap, that kind of thing. And
Yep.
I used to do that at the beginning of every hourly project back in the days. It was nothing new to me. The difference is packaging it differently and saying like every project starts with a discovery call. At the end of it, you're going to have a very valuable roadmap of prioritized features. And, in my case, it was software development or repair, a prioritized list of bang for the buck. This is the best bang for the buck at the top. It'll take you no time at all to do it. And it's going to be very valuable down to the stuff that would be nice to have, but very expensive to implement. And I would say, and you don't have to work with me after I give you that. You can take it to someone cheaper. I don't care. It's fun. I mean, I'd like to work with you, but you don't have to. It's a portable
Yep.
document. There's no lock-in. So
Yep.
they can, and then I can do an amazing job of, I might not even have to have another conversation with them because I will have uncovered all of the value in the discovery phase. And then I can say, all right, I give them the product, the roadmap, the productized service piece. And they're like, this is amazing. We want to get started on this right away. We don't want to find someone cheaper. We want you to do it. What are our options? And then I'd say, well, I can think of 3 ways that we could work together. I'll send you over a proposal on Wednesday for the small, medium, and large. And if that's acceptable, let me know and I'll go ahead. And they say, yes, that would be great. And then you do the value-based proposal piece so that you can do both.
Got it. One of the things that I like about this model, this like paid discovery phase, is it does a couple of things. One, it allows for you to have a lower barrier of entry for the client, which the larger barrier of entry, the harder it is to actually make the sell. So if you create a bite-sized thing that you're able to do, it also allows for you to be able to gate clients better. Because if you end up realizing that like, oh, I just don't want to work with this client, that we just don't get along, it allows for you to not offer the next level, the
Right.
next layer of it that is just a nice little business hack utility that you can
Right.
utilize as well.
Right.
I know that in the pre-call you mentioned this like max price formula, this
Mhm.
like desire, money, options, variability. Can you unpack it a little bit and describe what that works in an agency context?
A lot of people, when they hear value pricing and they hear the concept, a lot of people interpret it as like gouging or something, or, you're just taking all of the money, like, give me all your money, how much money you got, I'll take all of it. And it's not that way at all. In fact, it's a double-edged sword because if the value is not there, your prospect is a small company and the thing that they need done is going to be really hard, a lot of work, like what's a mom and pop pizza place and they want you to build them online ordering from scratch or something like that. There's
Sure.
just no world in which the
Makes
amount
sense.
of money, right, it just doesn't make sense. It cost me 100, 200, 300 hours to do that maybe, and they're only going to get like incremental revenue of like $500 a month. And
Yep.
that's not even all profit. So you just can't It's not like you can just set for whatever price you want. You have to set it based on the value to the person sitting across the table from you.
There's still market constraints, even with value-based pricing.
Precisely. But it's worse than that even. So the value price, the max price formula you talked about. First of all, the desire has to be very high. So there's the three parameters. The client needs to have a very high desire for the thing that you are offering. So it needs to be very urgent. The more urgent, the better. The more deeply they desire it, the better. And so that's good. And then you sort of like this sort of formula itself is like, then you multiply that by how much money they have, their buying power. So if they want something really, really bad and they've got a ton of money, then they're going to be willing to spend a ton of money to get that thing that they want. Now, here's the problem. Those two numbers are divided by options. So if they feel like they have a lot of options, the more options they have, the lower that price is going to be. So if there are 100 options, they see no difference between you or someone else. They see no difference between this apple and that apple and the next apple. They want it really bad. They've got tons of money, but there's 400 of them in the barrel here, then it's not going to be worth that money. They're going to say like, I'll take this one. This one's only 50 cents or whatever. But if you're on a desert island and there is no other option, never mind no other apples, there's no other food, Elon Musk would give you all his money for that apple because he can't use the money, but he can use the apple. So what does this mean for agencies? This means that you need to be different from your competition in a way that is meaningful to your ideal buyers. Not in some way that's meaningful to you or your peers or your employees, but in a way that matters to the people you want to work with. You want to create a monopoly of whatever the thing is that you do, or the way that you do it, or the kind of problem you solve, or the kind of client that you work with. If you don't do that, then it's just apples to apples to apples and you're competing on price. So even if you value price a proposal and you give it to some client, they're going to say, well, this is 2 or 3 times more than the next request. We sent an RFP. We got all these things in. And these other people are like less than half of what you cost. You're in trouble because they clearly do not see a difference between you and them except for the price. Yep. So you're scrambling.
Yep. Which, I mean, I think you would get that even if you were twice as expensive, but if you're still in the running, that means that there's some component of question. I mean, I also think that there's the reality of if I were to get 3 proposals, 2 of which are $5,000 and one of them is $20,000, I would wonder, well, why is the $20,000 one $20,000? Mm-hmm. And would want to have a conversation just to understand, well, there's a distinction of what's going on here. And I'd want to, from a curiosity perspective, but also would make me question, well, maybe it should be $20,000. So there's also a piece to that as well. I have I guess an ethical question and then a practical one. Mm-hmm. Some have argued the idea around it being unethical to offer like different prices. And are you advocating for the idea of different prices depending on the person that's in front of you? And if someone were to say that they feel that that's unethical, how would you respond to that?
You didn't say a word that I think is important. Different prices for the same thing.
Yes, that's what I meant. Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's no such thing as the same thing. If you're in a service business, there's no such. You've never done 2 projects that were exactly the same. It doesn't happen.
Let's maybe go very granular. Let's say that it's same length of pages, web design agency, 5-page brochure website. Sure, there's like little distinctions between the design and the intricacy of the site, the amount of animation, that sort of thing. And yeah, they're different, but largely they're relatively same. Would it be ethical or unethical to do 1,000 for one and 50,000 for another? I'm just using extreme numbers for the sake of argument.
Okay, let's go into it because there's a couple of different ways to take this. First of all, I'd make that a productized service because you're talking about deliverables. If you're value pricing, you need to talk about results. So you wouldn't talk about some number of pages. You'd talk about conversions. You talk about traffic. You get as close to down the funnel, you get as close to the money as you possibly can. Or on the other side of the money, you would be improving their operations in some way. Agencies probably don't do that, but a dev shop would. A dev shop would, the point of sale for your client. So your client has customers, and anything that's going to get them more money coming in, more customers, anything that leads to money, you can sell that, not some number of pages or a brand redesign or something like that. You sell them results. What do they want? They want more money, or they want to save money on the other end. So you either give them higher revenue, lower costs, or something that is going to lead to that they are confident, they're sure, in fact, is going to lead to one of those 2 things. I mean, if you wanted to sell deliverables, that's fine, but I would do it in a productized way. I would say like, yeah, like a 5-page website with this list of components is $5,000. And I know people who do great doing exactly that. But they
It's a
don't
different
have
model.
to. It's a different model. It's a business choice. It's a strategic level business decision.
One just kind of mic drop there, like the way that you started the conversation, like is just the 100% right, of like you're not having a conversation around what the value is. And this is where I think most people get stuck in this transition of like value-based pricing doesn't work because you're still talking purely in the idea of deliverables versus
Yeah.
actually talking about metrics, impact, the outcome for the client. And if you're not having that discussion, then no, you are still deliverable based and productized, and no, you're not value-based pricing at all. So thank you for creating that distinction and having that.
Sure.
One piece of, let's say that I'm in a place where I am hourly model right now. I am not sure which direction to go. Maybe I'm on the ICP that I work with is a little bit lower on the price point. So I'm trying to decide between value-based pricing and productized as the two distinctions of what I'm trying to decide. Is there a bite-sized version that I can do or a tiny experiment that I can take into doing this?
Yes. Yes. So the first thing I would say is if someone was at that crossroads, I would want to have a conversation with them and find out what kind of business do they want to be running in the next 2 or 3 years? Do they want to be working with bigger and bigger clients for more and more money, but maybe only 3 or 4 clients a year, but maybe 5, depends on what you do. Maybe as many as 10, but probably not. It's probably going to be maybe 4. It depends on the size of the agencies. But do you want to have a small number of really big clients where you're doing projects? Or would you rather have it, and it's sales intense and spiky, a lot of spikiness? Or do you want something more predictable, more systematized, and that's almost a personality thing for the owner. It's like, do I want more predictability or do I want to swing for the fences more and have some huge home runs? You're not going to have huge home runs with productized services, but you're going to get tons of stability. And so it's like, what kind of world do you want to live in 3 years from now? And then work toward that. So that would be the main thing. So now once you pick one of those two things, my recommendation would be different depending on which direction you were going to go. But in the productized service direction, let's say you're used to doing projects by the hour, I would probably break off an initial paid discovery piece, and because you're probably already doing it, you probably already have like procedures in place for how to run such a thing. It's probably already systematized, or you've got SOPs and checklists and all. You know how to do it. It's the same process for each client. Yeah, hopefully. And I would just set a price for that. And then any new clients have to do that. Like, this is the starting point. You do this thing. And then after that, we decide if we want to move forward with something bigger. That's a really standard way to do it. If you want to go in the productized direction. And it's also good that, that might be the best way to go for everybody, because still that's a really good way to land high value price projects. So that's probably the best for either person.
As the first step in the process. So this conversation has been really great. I know that we've had conversations around the hourly model, value-based pricing distinction. I think that this was a really concise and useful way to reframe the conversation for listeners as well. So I know, Jonathan, if you've got a free resource for those listening that walks people through that shift kind of step by step, where can they get it and what exactly does it include?
Sure. If anybody listening wants to learn more about value-based pricing, we definitely only scratch the surface here. So you should go to valuepricingbootcamp.com, and that will redirect to a page on my website where you can sign up for a free 6-day email course. And it walks through these stages that we talked about, but in much more depth. And they all come from my personal email. You can reply to anyone. It goes straight to my inbox. I reply to all of them. So it's a great way to start a conversation. If you have questions, if there's something not covered in the course, it's totally fine. It's my mission to rid the world of hourly billing, so I like helping people to get started.
Awesome. I'll make sure to include a link in the show notes. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening in today. With all of the shifts in the industry, it is easy to feel overwhelmed or unsure of your next move. So I'm not here to try to sell you anything. I just want to give back and guide you through the uncertainty. Whether you're navigating new trends or just need some clarity, we're here to listen and offer advice. Head to creativeagencysuccess.com/chat to book a free 15-minute chat with an agency mentor who can provide you with a fresh perspective. Let's figure out the best steps for your agency's growth together.